Hi, welcome. So, if you're here, you have probably seen part one of the Jane Austen astrological birth chart discussion that is found on Miss Charlotte Astrology's channel. This is part two. So, welcome. My name is Melissa. As you can probably tell, this is my very first YouTube video. So, please do like and follow and encourage me to continue with this journey. So, here we are, part two. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, shall we move on to some of her other placements? So we talked about the midheaven, the fourth house. Also, I could just explain the midheaven a bit because I didn't talk about Uranus. So
Okay, yeah.
yeah, so the midheaven in Gemini, that's the talking, the writing, like it's communicative, it's social. And Jupiter expands that. So people with Jupiter on the midheaven, they tend to be highly respected. They tend to be like leaders in what they do. Like it's like the fun leader. It's the leader that you will it's fun to work for them. Like it's that kind of energy. As someone who's really, really respected, very highly intelligent, because Jupiter is a benefic, so it's beneficial. Now Uranus is also here. If we did this whole sign, it would all be in the 10th house. That Uranus is the internet, the public fandom. It's another fame placement. So she does have two fame placements, but we could argue because they're retrograde, it took time for her to find that fame. It was posthumous, right?
Yeah.
And then we also have the midheaven ruler at the bottom of the chart. Again, another placement that's like posthumous. So, yeah. Did she ever make it? Did she was she famous at the end of her life or was it after? It was well after that. Like how
Well,
long after did it take for her to make a name for herself after she died?
well, her books that were published in her life were popular. And so it's actually interesting because Sense and Sensibility came out, Pride and Prejudice came out, and then the Prince Regent at the time like took an interest in her and her work. And so even though she didn't like him, she had to dedicate Emma to him. So she was famous enough that people read her work and they knew her work, but they didn't know who she was. So basically, it was her first book, Sense and Sensibility, published by a lady. Second book came out, Pride and Prejudice, by the author of Sense and Sensibility. So it was kind of, it took that turn where it's these books have been written by the same authoress as the books you've enjoyed before, but no way was her name out there
So she
writing
didn't
them.
even
But
she didn't even have a pseudonym to work with. Like some female writers, they'll use a male name. She didn't even do that.
no, no, it was just by a lady. And then after that, once Sense and Sensibility had some notoriety, the author of Sense and Sensibility, and then later author of Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice.
And that was after
Um,
her death or towards the end of her life.
that was during her life. After her death, then she's named.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to have a look at this Neptune on the ascendant because there can be issues with identity with this.
Mhm.
The ascendant is it's like the first layer of the onion. It's the first part of you. So when you're born on that eastern horizon, that the sign on the eastern horizon, that's like your rising sign, right? And whatever planet, and if you have a planet, is on that ascendant, that's what's rising. So she had like Neptune rising. So she's got Neptune sitting on her face right there. Um, this planet is associated with like a bit of an identity crisis. I think also someone who's highly spiritual that has a hard time navigating between, reality, this kind of like everyday humdrum reality, and also the spiritual world. So she walks through life with these two things in front of her and she's juggling these things, and it's a hard path to walk. Anyone that has Neptune on the ascendant is going to be highly idealistic, maybe even delusional, and they may even suffer from a bit of an identity crisis. So I'm not sure how that fits in with her work because I don't know her work as well as you do. But yeah, Neptune on the ascendant, it's a bit of a fame placement as well. Marilyn Monroe had it, and I think Kim Kardashian has it. Um, and they're very sensitive to other people's criticisms as well. People project onto them a lot. They can tend to get into a lot of trouble as well with this placement because of those projections. Anyway, I just thought I'd leave that with you. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I think is most interesting about this is I feel like it would make sense that obviously she has some sort of complex about her personality and her identity because she's a woman living in a time where, as a woman, you got married and you had kids, and that's what trajectory of most people's lives are, right? Especially for women, because it's not like you really had a lot of choice in the matter. So you're the property of your father and then of your husband. And that's how most women, especially within her class, like that's how they lived. But then she's this woman who is a writer who's like sharing her thoughts and her um, observations with the world. So then you have that aspect. And then I also have always thought it was really interesting because she's a woman who never married, but yet in all of her stories, she always kind of gives her heroines a happy ending. So it's really fascinating in itself. Obviously, she's very well aware of the norms of her time, and so she grants it to all the beautiful characters she's created. Herself, she also doesn't have that.
Yeah, so she in her books she idealized her life. Like if it could be anything, it would be this, you know.
Yeah.
Like the happy ending with Pride and Prejudice. Like she found a man that was her intellectual equal that could could spar with her and like meet her where she's at, and she never really found that. So
Mr. Darcy, like every woman's in love with Mr. Darcy,
It's
right?
also because she's a Virgo rising, Mercury is not just the ruler of her midheaven, Mercury is the ruler of her entire chart, and it sits here at the bottom of the chart. So again, like a lot of her identity is connected to her career, to this fourth house, this third house, this social life where she feels very restricted. She has a lot of difficulty with it. She philosophizes about it. She idealizes it because she's so incredibly unhappy. Not to say that she's this tragic figure. I don't want her life to be summed up in that way, but she's just got so many difficulties here. Like she can't truly be herself. And yeah, having her chart ruler, her midheaven ruler as Mercury being so terribly aspected and having part of fortune sitting there, she's never really going to be appreciated for who she truly is until like later. Um yeah. It's a rough chart. It's very rough. And Neptune also squares her sun, so she is a bit of a dreamer as well,
Hmm.
which is not it's not the most practical of placements, you know. While she's got this incredible skill, which today she would be able to monetize quite easily, she maybe would have been a journalist or like a J.K. Rowling or something. In her time, like and Neptune is a generational planet, she's being rejected everywhere. Or she's not even like even with her releasing her work, she can't even put her name to it.
Yeah.
And it's great work and she's not allowed to own her own work. Like
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that Mercury is the chart ruler of like her whole like natal chart, right? Because when you think about how she's using her words to communicate her thoughts with, like in her letters with people in her community and her
mm,
family, but then also to the world, really. And it's interesting how Elizabeth Bennet is her most well-known, most popular, most beloved character in all of her books. And again, what do you think about? You think about like this really like witty, idealistic young woman who has all these challenges in her life, like based on, her family and whatnot. But then through her mind, she's able to overcome all that and to win the heart of a Mr. Darcy with how intelligent and witty and smart she is.
yeah. It's brilliant, but it's also kind of it's sad because you know what? I feel like that story about Elizabeth Bennet, like it's such a the reason why it lives on this story is because it's so applicable to now. It's so universal that you have this amazing young single woman who is highly intelligent and no one really appreciates that and she's it's hard for her to find that right person and yeah and then the dream is that she does and that does happen to some women now obviously but it doesn't happen for a lot of women too so maybe that's why Jane Austen's work is so beloved. um we relate. It would be nice to meet someone who's like, oh my
Well,
God, you're so brilliant, that's why we love you. You know.
Well, it's just she's written these universal tales, right? Like so it's one of those things where he's her and Shakespeare, right? Like they've changed the course of literature. As much as people like kind of diss a Hallmark movie or a romance story, they kind of all have their roots in her writing, right? It's kind of like you have this fantastic main character who's, really smart and intelligent, and then she like meets a guy she can't stand, he's very haughty or whatnot, right? Like the Mr. Darcy type. And then she meets another guy and she falls for him. But then if we're watching this Hallmark movie, everyone knows it's like, no, it's not that guy who's so charming and cute. He's actually a scoundrel. Like the good guy was the first guy that, like you had some issues and tension with, right? So it's like everyone can recognize that story and it originated with her. Like
Mm,
it's just so brilliant.
it
It's why
is.
everyone still loves her today.
Yeah. And another thing I noticed with her chart, she's got, do you see how there's a big blue triangle in her chart? It's a grand trine.
Yep.
This, this is a grand trine of generational planets. So it seems like whatever success that she has from this grand trine is almost completely out of her control. So if you look here, she's got Neptune at 24 degrees, and then if you follow the blue line, it it connects it connects to, hold on. Oh my gosh. Let me just, I want to move this over a bit. So you can see that Neptune there. Where's with these widgets? There we go. Um, Neptune trines Uranus, and that's at an early degree in Gemini. And then if we move down, Uranus trines Pluto at 25 degrees, and then Pluto trines back to that 24-degree uh, Virgo. So yeah, she's got this grand trine of generational planets. Now, this success, whatever abundance or success that she can achieve from this grand trine, is completely out of control, and also I could argue is delayed because these are slow moving planets, right?
Yeah.
And her success, while she achieved some success in her own life, again, it wasn't until she died that she kind of became this icon, and that was
Hmm.
out of her control. A work that lives after her death. Her work has lived longer than she has been alive, and having these having these generational planets in this connection here makes a lot of sense. I mean, Neptune on the ascendant is a bit of an icon placement. Someone who suffers, walks through the world suffering a lot, and then they die and they become, they're stars in the sky. It's that kind of tale. But yeah, this grand trine, the ascendant, Neptune on the ascendant trining Uranus, which is pretty much on in the 10th house or on the midheaven. So the career, the iconography, and then it connects to this fifth house Pluto. Fifth house is creativity. It's your art. So these three things all connect up. Career, the iconography, her as a famous person, and then her creative output. They all link up with the generational planets. So that makes a lot of sense here.
Hmm.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's just right there.
Yeah. And then also, I'm wondering, do we know anything about, I don't know, was there any discussion about her fertility or anything? Like like children, what was there any discussion around that? She just stayed single her whole life, right? So,
Yeah, so she was engaged for like 12 hours. And then so essentially what happened was she was visiting some friends of hers. There's two sisters that her and her sister were very close to. The sister's brother was also there, and so the brother is going to, inherit the family estate and whatnot. And then he gets chatting with Jane, and then he asked her to marry him, and she immediately says yes. Like everyone's kind of surprised. I think she was surprised herself because it's
mm,
not like there was much there to consider prior to this whole thing. I think she like went to bed that night and then she woke up the next morning and was like broke off the engagement. So it's one of those things like she said yes, expectation of her society. Like, why wouldn't she say yes? This guy's gonna, inherit his family property and she's gonna be this respectable woman and she's not gonna have to be concerned about money. Being a spinster or an old maid, everything she has right now in her life is through her father. It's a pretty precarious situation for women in that time. What happens when your father dies? Well, obviously, the money that he has dies with him or it goes to, the brother. And so she really put herself in a pretty vulnerable state by turning down this man the next day.
that's so she didn't love him. It wasn't a romantic connection. This was like a business deal.
so many relationships then weren't for
Hmm.
love,
Yeah.
right? So,
I'm wondering if she just felt like, because she's got Juno and Saturn sitting together, marriage would have been very, it would have put her in shackles. Like there's a lot of karma that comes with signing the contract of marriage. Like this is not a romantic placement. I'm sorry, Saturn and the moon together. I think she did, as sensitive as she was, I do think she compartmentalized her feelings a lot. Um, I think she was like, yeah, I think there might have been maybe a fear of, I don't want, like a fear of making that kind of commitment. It might have felt like a bit of a prison.
and
And
I do want to say that is justified because if you are the lady of the household, you're gonna have different responsibilities put on you. You
mm,
know, you have to maintain the household staff, these things. You have to like host people when they come. You have to have children. You have to, like it's a lot. I
mm,
think today we know like it's dangerous for women to have kids. Not exactly a walk in the park. And then this is also a different time too. Like a lot of women would, unfortunately pass through pregnancies.
so I'm seeing
So
some
that's
things
always a real
here.
fear.
I was just gonna say, with this chart, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if she's ever written about it, if she had a paranoia about having like actually giving birth or having babies, because she's got Saturn, and Saturn is like the womb space, right? It's with, sorry, the moon is like the womb space, and it's sitting with Saturn. So motherhood has a very heavy burden, and then it's squaring off or in a fight with this fifth house Pluto or Mars. So there could be dangers around pregnancy or even just paranoia about dangers in regards to pregnancy. And I'm just wonder if that was part of the reason why she was like, no. Like,
Um, Also, I want to add, so the man she turned down, he ended up marrying someone else, and they ended up having like 8 kids, like a ridiculous number of kids as well. So that could have easily been her fate. And like we also know, like all these responsibilities we're talking about, she wouldn't have had time to write, right? Like if she was a married woman, she wouldn't have been able to do that. She was able to write in the past because her dad supported it. But like, who's to say what this guy would have wanted from her? Like what his expectations would have been.
mm,
And even in her household, like later on when she lived in Chawton Cottage with her mother and her sister, she would be writing in like the dining room area. But if she heard footsteps coming, it could be their household staff, like their servants. And so she would have to immediately put her writing away because then they would know she's a writer. Though her family knew, it would have been inappropriate for, other people to know that. And
mm.
so it's still secretive within her own house. So there's no question a man she doesn't know might have issues with his wife writing.
Yeah. There is a fight here because I can see a tension between her Libra moon Saturn conjunction and then her Mars Pluto in Capricorn conjunction. There is a fight within her because on one hand, there is this, I mean, moon in Libra. I'm a moon in Libra. Like I completely understand like wanting to have that ideal partner who is equal to you, who can you can give to them and then they can give to you, having that equal exchange. So for her to be happy in a domestic partnership, she needs to have an equal exchange. But being the time that she's in, it wasn't an equal exchange,
No.
and there's this part of her that's deeply romantic that probably was like, yes, I'll get married. Oh, wait. Mars and Capricorn with Pluto. I really want to do what I want to do. Like I want to write. Like her Mars and Pluto plays out in the fifth house of creativity. And she was such a, like this is habitual. Like she was writing every day. She was practicing her craft every day. And if she were to go with the Libra moon and fall in love and have a bunch of babies and run a household, she would not be able to fulfill the potential of this fifth house Mars and Pluto. She would not have. And in the end, based on what I'm hearing here and based on what I'm seeing here, it seems like she chose the Capricorn placements. She chose those. She wanted that freedom. In the end, it did hurt her though, because the idea of a square is that there's a fight within you. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, what that it left her, I mean, alone or lonely, as a spinster, so and I'm sure she was very happy and satisfied with her choice, but she made herself very vulnerable um with that. So I think there were periods of her life where she was quite poor or like had to be in a budget. Like she could not. like waste money. So Saturn in the second house be doing that.
So that's like super accurate. When her father retired, they retired to Bath. So her brother, her oldest brother, took over the church
Hmm.
that her dad was like running, who's like the rector of. And so they're in Bath and he passes away after 5 years. And so at that point, any of the income that went to her dad just kind of disappeared. And so there's lots of period of financial instability with her sister and her mom. And they ended up kind of joining up with one of her friends, Martha Lloyd, who was also a woman who was unmarried. And then they were trying to like live together to try and pool some of their money. But then there was this period of time where they just had to keep moving until her brother eventually stepped in and like offered them a place to live. But there was like several years in there where not a lot is written because she didn't have that peace of mind.
So what was she doing to earn money? Like if she could, like, do you know? Like if she wasn't writing, what was she doing? Do you know?
So basically, when her dad was like still living, had like income that would have been like his retirement, but essentially that dies with him, right? Like a living. And so they would have had some little bits that they could have put together and pooled, but it wouldn't have been that much.
But that money that the dad, that it didn't die with him, didn't it just go to her brother?
No, brother would have had the salary from the church.
But her
So
brother had some money and he took care of them by giving them a property or something, giving them a place to live.
So that's actually like really kind of contentious because it took him a long time to offer it. So
Mhm.
basically, there is her older brother who took over the house they grew up in and their dad's placement in the church. And then she had a third brother, like the second brother was ill. The third brother, he was sent off to live with distant relatives. And then so those relatives were childless. They kind of like adopted him because they didn't have kids of their own. And so he ended up changing his name to Knight, which is their family name. And so he became the heir to their estate. So they actually had three different properties. And so one thought was that when he inherited the property, it was disputed by other people in the Knight family because they didn't want like this person coming in and just inheriting everything,
Mhm.
even though that was the wishes of his adopted family. And so some people are of the idea that like, hey, he could have offered them a place to live earlier, but because it was kind of contested, maybe that's why he didn't. But the reality is he lived in a very big, expansive mansion and he had a little cottage. And then after a period of several years, um, he offered the cottage to like his mother and his sisters.
Oh,
But that time in between was very unstable for them
yeah.
because they didn't have a place to live that was secure. So,
Okay. Because there are a couple of things that I'm looking at here. So if you look at Jane's eighth house, that Chiron in Aries plays out in that eighth house. So Chiron is an asteroid that ping pongs between Saturn and Uranus, and it represents an unhealed wound, something that is like festering that you'll never really heal, but you have to constantly take care of it. And that Chiron plays out in the eighth house of shared resources, inheritance. So she has a wound around inheritance. And what you're describing here, that sounds like it. I mean, Chiron in Aries is also like it's a masculine wound, so a wound around men, men in her eighth house, like the brothers, the father.
oh, so horrible.
So it yeah, like the money is a difficult, even though like she could like it sounds like her brother had enough to t who knows what was going on, but like sound like he had resources and he could have helped her out a bit more than what he could have. Great. It's great that he gave her a house in the end, but yeah, this looks difficult. That Chiron in the eighth or playing out in the eighth, and then she's also got an oh, poor little Venus. Her Venus in Scorpio is unaspected, pretty much, and it's playing out in the third house of siblings. So I think there could have been a lot of love between the siblings, but given that Venus here is it's in its like detriment here, in Scorpio. It doesn't really like being there. There could be power struggles within this family with between the siblings. As much love as because Venus in the third house is really lovely, in terms of like siblings, like having loving relationships, but it's not in an easy sign and it's unaspected. So her brother coming in, I guess, saving the day and giving her a home, like that could be like considered an act of love, but that it took a long time to get there. So I'm wondering if there was a power struggle between her and her brother at some point.
Well, it's also interesting because if you're familiar with Sense and Sensibility, it's kind of the same storyline playing out with Eleanor and her sister and her mom. It's like the father has died, and then their stepbrother has inherited all the money, but he has, even though he promised, like on the father's deathbed, that he would help look after his sisters and his stepmom, he refuses to do so. It was always very much her being well aware of what could happen with her and her sister because she wrote about it, right? I don't even know if it's like manifesting or self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's essentially what happened to her. And it's written in print, in one of her stories.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm glad he came through in the end. The last place I want to talk about is this North Node with Lilith, and it is in the 11th house. And we could also, if we did this whole sign, it's in the 12th. In this chart, I will say for the moment, for the sake of this Placidus chart, this North Node is in the 11th house of the public, of the fandom. And it's sitting with Lilith, the goddess of abortion and divorce and, you know, evil women. Women who don't want to be married. Women who are free. Women who are like in the wilderness, like eating babies. Right? So not literally, we're being all metaphorical here, but her North Node, her destiny lying in the 11th house of the fandom and that could and she is iconic now, right? So that makes a lot of sense here. And Leo is a creative sign. It's like self-expression art, right? So finding that fandom, becoming famous, becoming iconic through her creative work. But Lilith is here. And so I always say that where Lilith is in a woman's chart is where she must be free. So her destiny was to be this kind of wild, untamed woman who would not follow the patriarchal rules. Like screw society. And that's what happened. Like she died rather young, which is very, very sad. But she died free. And maybe I don't know if she was penniless, but she died a free woman, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, if I looked at it whole sign, it's a 12th house North Node. Um, so I mean that is kind of like that's the fantasy house. That is like it's also that's a proper iconography house because it is governed by Neptune and it's associated with Pisces and it is like the ether. It's like I always say the 12th house is the place where you were before you were born and it's a place you return to when you die. And yeah, she kind of exists in this not as a person anymore, but she's kind of like there's like a lot of mythology around her. We're never really going to get to know her as a person, as a flesh and blood human, but we get to know her through her writing. Like she lives on, you know. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting that she has that North Node with Lilith. Like her destiny was just to remain this highly accomplished, unmarried woman, which I think back in the day would be seen as quite a tragedy, but it turned into a triumph ultimately.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about what you're saying is that so she in her life wrote thousands of letters, right?
Mhm.
Only like 161 letters exist today, and they say that her sister, who was her best friend and her confidant and possibly her soulmate in her life, destroyed like two-thirds of the letters, right?
Wow.
Thousands of letters gone, and there's some debate with scholars saying because a lot of these letters are just removed like from like the public ever knowing about it. There's so much we'll never know about her inner thoughts because it would have been inappropriate for us to know about it. And because we don't know so much about her, we can kind of look at her as a symbol for us to like place our own ideas on.
Hmm.
So I feel like
I bet
that
there
really
was
relates to what you're
I
saying
bet
right
there was
there.
some juicy gossip. She's a Libra moon. The Libra moon, like she has a Libra moon. The woman loved to gossip.
Yeah.
I'm a Libra moon. Look what I do for a living. Like essentially, like it's glorified gossip. I'm like, who's this person? What are they doing?
Yeah.
And the Venus playing into the third house does speak. It does speak to her. It's unaspected, but still having a loving sibling.
Yeah. Oh.
I'm sorry, she's just cat ladies. But yeah, yeah, it's a nice placement for siblings overall. So I'm glad to hear that her best friend, Venus in the third house, her best friend was her sister. So it's
Yeah.
anyway. But yeah, that's her chart. I think we've covered pretty much all of her placements.
It's amazing because like we can look at her history, we can look at her writing, and then with her birth chart, it's all mirrors together, right? Like it all kind of makes sense, right? Like
Yeah, and she's got, it's really interesting with this 250th birthday, she's got a lot of returns. Like I know it's Pluto's in is in Aquarius, but it was her Pluto return. So there is this saying that, empires they rise and they fall within a 250-year period. Um, she's just had her Pluto return and she's making this return, like she died, she fell 250 years ago, but now her memory has like it's resurrected, it's come back. And her work has lasted this whole time. So this is going to be a very significant transit, this return. And then of course it's her birthday. And then on top of that, it's her Uranus return. So Uranus moving through her midheaven. Maybe I should make a prediction. Uranus moving through her midheaven, her 10th house, and the Uranus return. I'm wondering if there's going to be more modern, like what do you call it? Films. Like we're gonna see more interpretations, modern interpretations of her work. How many books did she write?
let's think about this for a
I think they
minute.
are making a Pride and the Prejudice, though. I think they're
Yeah, they're
making
making a
one.
new Pride and Prejudice, and there's this new series that came out this year where it was talking about Cassandra. And then there was a movie that came out this year that was like Jane Austen wrecked my life.
Mm,
Uh, there's more people than ever doing the pilgrimage to Bath for the festival, which,
yeah,
I took part of this year. So let's think. Okay, so Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Mansfield Park, Emma, and then you've got Northanger Abbey, Persuasion. So yeah, six books that she wrote. Sannington wasn't completed. And she's got like her short stories in there. So yeah,
yeah. We're
six
gonna
books that she wrote.
we're gonna see we're gonna see some more then. I think that yeah, she'll continue to live on. We're gonna see like I think a lot of interest. I think with Gen Z, I think they're gonna find her and they're gonna like they're gonna make her their own in a way. Like
Yeah, and this is gonna piss people off too, but like Bridgerton's coming out in a few more months, early next year, and as much as that isn't Jane Austen, it's in the Regency period, and the reason why that show exists and those books exist is because there was interest in Jane Austen. So as much as, like scholars and Jane Austen fans might be appalled by that show in itself, like there is interest because it keeps evolving, like
hmm
the interest in that time period and her characters and the romance of that period, really.
hmm Yeah, it's gonna be interesting what we see happen to her work, her legacy over the next few years, because it's just going to keep evolving because she's an icon. She's kind of obviously it's very different, but kind of like Marilyn Monroe, like she lives on in different ways through different mediums. So we'll see.
Her influence is global,
Yeah.
like even in places you wouldn't think.
And it's a testament to her skill as a writer, you know.
Yeah.